So the recording has started. I hope everybody can hear me. In case, yeah, maybe just one or two people in the chat, just give me a confirmation that you can. Nice. So yes, thank you all to coming to this meeting today. Johan and I are super excited and super stoked to start this meeting, this study group. We have called it Saima, which stands for Salesforce Architects in the Making. And I'll just run you through real quick what we are gonna be doing today. So we'll start with a small welcome and introduction. Just so you know what's gonna happen today and in the next weeks and months. Then we have our main topics for today: implicit sharing by Johan and skews and record locking by me, and then we'll follow it up with a very short summary. We have intended for this to take around about an hour, so we'll try to stick to that. We just don't want to make it too long, and yeah, that's what is going to happen. So first of all, of course, you might want to know who is talking to you, although I do think I have my webcam turned on, maybe just a little bit about the two of us. So I'll give Johan the chance to introduce himself, and then I'll let you know who I am as well. Johan, you should be unmuted now.
Thanks, Nora. Thanks for handing me over. Yeah, I'm super stoked that so many people showed up. When I wrote the LinkedIn post, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I expected 2 or 3 people to create a small group. This was kind of the goal of Nora and me. I ended up with more than 300 people in the email list and almost 100 people showing up here. So super happy that so many people are with us. I'm Johan from Berlin. I'm currently not working. I took probably the worst timing for a sabbatical you can choose, but what are you going to do about it? Before that, I was working as a technical product manager, Salesforce, which is a fancy word for I was writing tickets. And this is my email address, and feel free to contact me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thanks. Nora, back to you.
Great, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Nora. I have been in the Salesforce universe for almost 5 years. I have my 5-year anniversary coming up, so I'm excited about that. I've been working in different consultancies over the last years, and about a year ago, roundabout, I started working as a freelance Salesforce trainer and consultant. So I do deliver a lot of trainings. Maybe one or the other might know me from an ADM or a dev course, because I do teach those, and I also consult. And you've got my email address here. If you ever want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. So before we get started into the topics, just a little bit of an overview of what we want to achieve with this meeting. I mean, as Johan said, it's amazing how many people signed up. So it feels like we've really hit a nerve there. And basically what we want to do is we want to support each other in preparing for the technical architect certification. I think all of us know that it's not the easiest certification to come by. There's a lot of work and preparation to go into it, and we just want to make sure we can support each other. So the main focuses that we have is we want to make sure that we create and share content that helps to prepare for the certification, because we feel like a lot of times it helps to listen to the same topic explained by different people, just because it allows you to repeat, and maybe one person explains it different than another one, and it might be easier for you to understand it one way than the other. So we want to do this, and it's basically what our aim is for today, just to share 2 different topics. And the other thing that we are going to be looking into is doing smaller study groups to make some room for discussion-based learning. A lot of learning happens when you talk about things, when you discuss them with other people. So what we're doing today is way too big to do any sort of study group. I don't want to imagine what happens if I would unmute all of us. It would be a big mess. So today it's just going to be 2 presentations, but we will be looking into doing study groups of some sort in the future as well. And if you have more ideas on what we should do, please do let us know. This should be an approach where we do something that helps all of us. And so if you have ideas, if you want to do something yourself, just reach out and we'll find a way to do that. So in terms of the housekeeping for today, Please, if you have a question, questions, post them in the chat, and we will try to answer some of them during the session. Probably not all of them, because we want to keep it short. The questions that we can't get to today, we will make sure to answer later on. We are not perfect in any way, so we don't know everything. That means we can make mistakes. If you spot a mistake in one of our presentations, in one of the things that we say, please let us know. I think it happens to all of us, and it's normal, and it's just important that we talk about it so we can make sure people understand it the right way. So please do let us know if you feel like something we said might not be 100% correct. And last but not least, if you are interested in presenting, I know all of you have signed up through our forum, and we've asked there already if you would be willing to present in the future. But if you haven't said so there, if you would just want to emphasize on it, please do reach out. And especially to all of the women out there, I want to emphasize, please do. There is a lot of presentations that I've seen from men talking, and while they are great, I also want to see a lot more women talking about Salesforce. So please do speak up and reach out. That's it in terms of the housekeeping, and we are almost full in our meeting. We are 89 people now. It's super exciting. So I will hand over to Johan for our first session, and I hope that it works, that he shares his screen, but it should. So Johan, you should be unmuted, and you should be able to
Thank you, Nora. I think you have to stop sharing.
Yeah,
that's all. Isn't Zoom a magic tool? No, I literally mean it this way. We have 90 people in a call, all can listen to us, and I have Berlin internet. Berlin internet on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. It's barely unusable. Also, my phone is currently not usable. There's no calls coming through. Anyways, thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot for Nora for the great introduction. I'm super looking forward to your presentation. So my personal goal is that this is kind of the last presentation I do in this round. And from now on, all you take over. I personally like the shorter presentations, like 10 to 20 minutes. Maybe I'm a YouTube kid. I'm easily distracted. 40 minutes is often too long. And over the last year, I spent a lot of time honestly on Ladies Be Architects. It's just, I watched every video there at least once, and we model ourselves a little bit around there. And this, because it's so helpful to have other people present content, and it's for me also very helpful to dig deep into topic. And implicit sharing, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, there's already questions are coming up. We will do it the following way. Nora will collect the best questions, or I will try to answer them afterwards, and the ones are missing, we try to answer later. Implicit sharing. If you would have asked me 3 weeks ago if I know about implicit sharing, I would be, yeah, kind of, sure, most of it. Then I started digging deep over the last 3 weeks and really tried in and out. And honestly, it's a deep topic, and I am kind of sure. This is why I included a kind of sure icon here. And on every slide, you will, not on every slide, but every time you see this icon, research yourself. Also, I'm just somebody who, I want to give you ideas. I'm not 100% sure about the stuff I talk about, especially since the documentation is not too up to date. Oftentimes they mention stuff like a portal user, where I'm like, what's a portal user? Is a customer community user also a portal user? Is a partner portal user? So it's kind of, or then they first mention a portal user, then they mention a community user. Is it the same? No. Anyways, I will now talk about 5 different ways of implicit sharing. Parent, child, portal, case, and the weirdest of all of them, share groups. It should take no more than 20 minutes. I will always make it the same way. First, I read out loud the Salesforce definition. Then I try to explain it in my own words. And lastly, I will do a live demo. Fingers crossed, live demo. Okay. I will have to rush through the demos a little bit. I kind of purposefully do this to make it not too long, and you all can watch it afterwards on YouTube, even in half the speed or double the speed. So let's get started with the first one, parent. Now my Salesforce documentation voice. Read-only access to the parent account for a user with access to a child record. not used when sharing the child is controlled by its parent, expensive to maintain with many account children. When a user loses access to a child, Salesforce needs to check all other children to see if it can delete the implicit parent. After reading it the first time, I had no idea what it means. Literally. After some digging, my theory is, it's kind of, you see the kind of sure here? I'm like 80-90% sure. It only affects accounts, 2 cases, contacts, and opportunities. And it only happens if the account is private and child is not controlled by parent. Why does it only affect account, contact, case, and opportunities? Because the relationship there is kind of a weird one. It's not really a master detail relationship, but it's not really a lookup relationship either. It's one of these ancient lookups. So as soon as a user has, what way ever, at least read access to a case, a contact, or an opportunity, the user also has read access to the related account. So sharing rules, manual sharing, other stuff. Okay, so I want to do a little demo. Our demo user will be Carla Sunflower. She's a trusted sales user. The organization by default will always, throughout all our demos, be everything is private. As I actually recently learned in one of the architect trainings that every object by default is private. And you only should make it not private if you have a reason for it. I honestly am guilty of doing it kind of the other way around. Usually everything is public. And I mean, it's kind of the easy way. One user complains, hey, I can't see that opportunity. Oh yeah, public read write. View all. No, from now on the other way around. And later we will see why it's actually the same should true for field level. Every field level security should always be turned. I think the ISV in the room know that already. Should be turned off, not and only turned on to profiles which is visible. But anyways, my demo. Carla has no access to any accounts, cases, contacts, or opportunities. It's kind of sad for a sales user, but anyways. I will manually, as a sysadmin, share a contact with Carla. And this gives Carla Sunflower read access to the account. Okay. Oh God, I'm so nervous. Okay, first, I present, Carla sees no account. Okay, she really sees no account. Then here, I have my account United We Stream. I have one opportunity here, or let's do one contact. And you know why I'm in Classic? I didn't actually know that in Lightning there's, as far as I know at least, no manual share button available outside of installing a package. Okay. Now I shared the contact with her. You see it even here, read only to the, and as soon as I go back, the account is visible to her, to Carla. Now comes the fun part. As soon as I go into the account and try to edit the account, I get, from a user point of view, really weird error message. I mean, what does this mean? Yeah, it means that you don't have write access, but I already can see the cases popping up from our users. What does this mean? So, as you saw, the parent is, again, coming back. Carla Sunflower got read access through a contact shared with her. This only works for contacts or cases or opportunities, nothing else. Now the next one, child. You would imagine it's kind of vice versa. Not at all, it's completely different. And it was completely new for me. Access to child records for the owner of the parent account. Not used when sharing on a child is controlled by its parent. Controlled by child access settings for the account owner's role. Support account sharing rules that grant child record access. Support account team access based on team settings. And when a user loses access to the parent, Salesforce needs to remove all the implicit children for that user. Okay. First of all, I was kind of confused that we have at some point this point here, as the full stop, and sometimes not, but what does it mean? Again, only affects account to cases, contacts, and opportunities. It only affects this time the account ownership. No sharing, no account team, nothing. So each role independently, and this is the detail part, independently can define what child record access the account ownership provides. So you can create really sophisticated sharing. It's kind of a shadow sharing. I actually wonder, maybe the people who are longer around on the platform know, was this something before sharing was implemented? It's an ancient technology. Anyway, maybe we need Salesforce archaeologists for that. Anyways, so each role can define, can the owner of the account see the contact or edit the contact, the opportunity, or the case independently. So again, we have Carla Sunflower. She is part of the Eastern sales team. Organization by default, account, context, cases, opportunity is set to private. Nothing changed. We make Carla Sunflower the account owner for our United with Stream account. This gives her the edit access to all opportunities. And then we change on her role the opportunity access to cannot access, which makes her not see the opportunities anymore. Good. I go back to my trusted account, United with Stream here. We change it to Carla Sunflower. Oops. What happens? Carla now sees there was only one opportunity. Should see it. It works again. And you see, it's she's not the owner. As I didn't update the ownership. It's still my system admin, the owner, and it's shared with her, this opportunity, because on her role, this is her role, opportunity access users in this role can edit all opportunities associated with accounts that they own, regardless who owns the opportunity. Once we change that to cannot access, yes, refresh, and it's gone. This can make for some very intricate sharing setup, and I have to say I will keep that in the back of my mind if we have more complex sharing requirements. At the same time, I find it a little bit hard to debug because it's different for every role, so you never can remember the rules. This brings me to the next one, portal. This one is pretty straightforward. Access to a portal account, whatever this means, and all associated contacts for a portal user under that account, shared to the lowest role under that portal account. Okay, only partner community license, but I only checked for partner, customer community, and customer community plus. As for me personally, the old licenses like portal don't exist anymore, like in my head. Hopefully I will never have to use them. It only affects contacts which were enabled for partner community at some point. The user doesn't have to be active anymore, but the user has to exist. And it means the partner community user has read access to her account and to all other contacts on that account. Okay. So how will I demo that? This time we use our demo contact, Mia Learns a Lot. She's one of our partners. Nothing changed on the organization by default. I will log into the community and she will see her account and the other contacts under her account. So where do we see Mia? Oh no, Mia, here we go. Hello, Mia. So she's a partner community user. Look into community as user. It's maybe not the most beautiful community, but so first of all, she sees her own account, the Dixon PLC, and she sees two other contacts, her contact and the second partner community user under the Dixon PLC. The Dixon PLC has about 5 or 6 different contacts. Maybe we can open it here. Yes, here we go. But since the other contacts are not, so this one is enabled for customer community, the high volume customer community user. Therefore, the contact is also not visible, and the other ones are not enabled for community. Therefore, they are also not visible. Again, only read-write, a read access, therefore she cannot change anything. But what does this imply? In communities, be super careful about field level security for your partner community profiles, because partner community users might accidentally somehow get access to their own account or contact and suddenly see internal description fields, partner rating, stuff like that. So make sure field level security is as tight as possible. Pete, maybe you know what I mean. Okay, so next one. As straightforward as you can imagine. Super niche topic actually. Case access. If a portal or customer community plus user is a contact on a case, then the user has read and write access on that case. I'm kind of sure, like 95%, but still there's 5% doubt in me. Again, only as this time it only affects cases, and each case has a contact lookup. And the contact which is mentioned in the contact lookup, standard contact lookup on the case, has automatically read and edit access for that case. It only affects partner and community plus licenses. For community licenses, you need sharing sets, which then behave kind of the same way. I want to show that. We stick with our customer Mia learns a lot. Nothing changed with the sharing settings, security settings. So Mia sees no cases. Then I create a case as a sysadmin for Mia. I will add her to the contact on the case, and this makes the case visible to her. So as every good magician, I show you, she sees no cases. Coming back to my trusted classic. Where is it? Here we go. So Mia learns a lot. The account is filled automatically. Then case for Mia by sysadmin. You see, I demo. Case origin. I always forget this one. And going back into the community, she suddenly sees the case. To prove that it's not only that there's no magic behind, as soon as I remove the contact here, it's still connected to that account. It's not visible anymore. I find it very interesting. Good. This concludes case access. And now we leave kind of sane territory and go into weird territory. Share group for high volume users. Access to data owned by high volume users associated with a sharing set for users, member of the sharing set's access group. All members of the sharing set access group gain access to every record owned by every high volume user associated with that sharing set. As you already know, high volume users, or high volume users mean customer community users, have very limited sharing capabilities. You cannot share manually with them. You cannot reference them in sharing stuff like that. So sharing sets are kind of the only way to share something with a high volume or customer community user. And in order to share records back from a customer who is owned by a high volume user, you have to use share sets, share groups, sorry, these two words. So this time it only affects customer community users. You can mention customer community plus and partner community users in share sets, but they have no effect on share groups. Okay, here I have the kind of sure I can, and this time I'm like 60% sure. I need a second icon for mostly sure. Okay, this time record ownership determines everything. So the record owner has to be the user. It affects almost all objects. Why do I say almost? I couldn't get it to work for contacts for some reason. I got it to work for every other object, but not contacts. Maybe some of you know why. The record owner needs to be a mentioned profile in the share set. And any record owned by a profile mentioned in the share set is shared with any user mentioned in the related share group. In the share group, you can only mention internal users, but you can mention them via role and subordinates, public groups, and profiles. This makes it you can make very small groups, but it will share every record. So it opens up the doors wide. Okay, the demo. And bear with me, this is the last demo we will see today. The high volume community user is our community user and Carla Sunflower, our trusted sales user. I create a share set for custom demo object and mention the community profile there. I add a share group and there I add the Carla Sunflower, the user. And as soon as the high volume community user creates a case record, Carla Sunflower sees that case record. Good, I will walk you through this time. Good, coming back here. Where are share sets hidden in community settings? Of course they are. It's kind of, share sets is really not my favorite topic. Okay, I understand from a Salesforce point of view that sharing with high volume community users is kind of a pain, but how they implemented it, I'm really not happy with. Okay, but this is our share set. So we mentioned the custom object demo object, and it doesn't matter, just access termination, read write, for the profile customer community user. And in the share group, we have, it's already activated and we will add Carla Sunflower. So, and now we log into community as the high volume community user. Create a case. Yes, I was too lazy to fix the case origin, make it the default value. High volume case for Carla. I click save and fingers crossed, Carla can see that case now. It worked. Just one more caveat here. As soon as I change the owner of that case to somebody who is not Carla, she would not see it anymore. But just a fun fact here. If I change this one here, how does it behave? She doesn't see it anymore. Fine. But I add it here again. And it's visible again. And as soon as I remove the profile here, what happens now? It stays visible. It's really, so even if but when I create a second case now, it's really, and this is why I say it's weird territory. So I create another case. The second one is not visible. So it seems that removing the profile from the share set does actually not force a recalculation of the cases owned by high volume, but change of the profile in the share group actually does. And this concludes my little talk about implicit sharing. Hopefully I didn't disappoint you and went into more detail and enlightened you a little bit on implicit sharing. I'm super looking forward to your corrections about all the mistakes I made and to the questions. And maybe Nora can update me on the questions and I can try to answer them.
So yeah, there was one question saying, a doubt saying, is it really best practice to put everything on private because it will add a lot of overhead on sharing calculations and it would decrease performance? Wouldn't it be better to just put things on private that actually need to be private and then have other things on public?
This is a very good question. I only can quote what I learned recently in the technical architect training. I can say from my personal point of view, this is not official best practice. Data privacy and data protection is one of the highest goods. The biggest mistake one of our companies we work for can make is if any data leaks for whatever reason. And if you not set it on private, it's easy to leak data. Removing page layout or removing a field from a page layout is not data security. Removing the object access, as not the object, but the tab in the community to access accounts is not making it secure. So I think you have to decide it on yourself. Performance, if you follow best practices, and especially Nora will talk about best practices around performance and account ownership. If you follow them, the performance should not be degraded too much. But this is just my personal opinion there. Thanks.
There is actually a point where I will talk about the public setting. Yes, that's true. And then there was another question. I think it was regarding the share groups in the end, whether there was a way to recalculate the sharing.
Maybe, I don't know. I have this, at some point, honestly, I gave up with that topic.
Okay. Then I think that's something that we can just maybe take again with us to see if we find an answer, and we'll post that to you. Probably when we post the video, we'll have it on YouTube and have comments underneath there with the answers.
Yes.
There is
Feel free to go forward and update me on share sets and share group.
There is a few more notes on the whole private and public topic, but not questions, more notes. So I'll leave it at that for now. I'm just watching the time a little bit and making sure we don't run over too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again.
Yeah, before we continue, I will take now the topic private and public default for objects, and actually as a idea for a topic next time.
Yeah. Okay. So, Johan, can you just confirm to me that you can see my presentation?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely fine. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Johan. That was quite interesting. Thank you so much. And I will take over now with another very interesting topic, and that's the topic of record locks and skews. I've put them together because they do go together a lot. One of them is like they depend on each other, basically. So I'll start out by walking you through what is a record lock and why does it happen and when can it happen. And then I'm going to walk you through the topic of skews. So we'll look into what is a skew. We'll learn that there's different kinds of skews in Salesforce, and we'll learn a little bit about each of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. And similar to Johan's presentation, if you have any questions, please do post them in the chat, or any notes, just post them. We'll pick them up at a later point. So let's get started with this very exciting topic, and we'll start with record locks. So if we look into Salesforce, we can basically differentiate between two types of record locks. The first one is business related, and that would actually be a lock of a record that is done intentionally, meaning it could be done within an approval process or through a read-only record type or anything where you actually want to pretend that people still edit a record. The ones that we are more focused on today is the system-related record locks, and those are record locks that are done by Salesforce. And I said they are available and implemented out of the box, but what's really important is that's not something that can be discussed. They are done by Salesforce, and we don't have any effect on them. We can just make sure we understand why and when they happen, so we know how to handle them, but we cannot change them in any sort of way. So what is a record lock done by Salesforce? I'm quite sure that you or one of your end users has seen this before, and it's super frustrating. It's an error where you'll get either, depending on where you are, you'll get an error unable to lock row, which is usually when you do a data load or when you work with Apex, or if you're an end user, sometimes you get an error when you try to save a record saying that it cannot be saved because it has been edited in the meantime. So those are the errors that we'll be looking at, that behind them there stands a record lock that has happened. So system-related record locks, why do they happen? Well, Salesforce, at the end of the day, there's a database where the data is saved, and the quality of any database is often measured by its data integrity. meaning we want to make sure that our data is accurate, it's complete, and it's consistent. Those are like the three keywords that go together with data integrity. And in order to make sure that our data is intact, one measure that Salesforce takes is to place a record lock on a record and on their parent records while that record is being edited. And that's not something that only Salesforce does, but it's something that a lot of databases do. So record locks is nothing specific to Salesforce. It happens in a lot of databases. We just need to know how they are done in Salesforce and when they are done and what we can do if we run into a record lock or how we can handle them. So record lock is placed on a record when it's being edited, and it also is placed on any parent records of the record that we are currently editing. So let's just look at two examples. One from a user point of view. When we edit a record, let's say we've got ABC Labs in there as an account. One person goes in, tries to edit, and it updates the billing city of ABC Labs to Berlin. At the same time, somebody else goes in, does the same thing, but it does update the city to the billing city Sydney, and that person saves right away before the first person does that. So we've gone through step 1, 2, and 3. When our person here on step number 4 tries to save, he or she will get an error saying, no, you cannot save this. It has been edited in the meantime. So we had placed a record lock on it, and you cannot edit it anymore because it would override or do something with the data that had been saved in between. So this is a very good example of why Salesforce places locks. It does make sure that data does not, let's say, get randomly overwritten. But of course, there's a lot more situations in which records can be touched and edited in some sort of way. So another example here is, for example, we've got, again, ABC Labs, and it's being updated through a data load where ABC Labs is updated with a rating of A. At the same time, so imagine it really happens at the very same second. There is an integration to, let's say, an SAP system that also tries to update the record ABC Labs, but it gives it a rating of B because maybe it's different in SAP. And maybe even a third time, there's some sort of automation Apex going on that also tries to update ABC Labs, but it gives it a rating of C. So we have the same record being edited in multiple ways or in multiple threads through different areas in Salesforce, trying to update the same data. This is a typical situation where two of these processes are going to run in, or potentially are going to run into a record lock issue, because the first thing that starts will place a lock on the record and the others will be stopped from editing it. Usually, so in this scenario, we have just ABC Labs where this happens. You're never going to see any error. The error will appear when the lock has been held for more than 10 seconds, which usually doesn't happen. It's usually a very quick scenario. The data loaded, updates ABC Labs, takes milliseconds, and then it releases the lock. But we will, within the skews, we will see situations in which record locks can be held a lot longer. And then after 10 seconds, so if the lock has been placed for 10 seconds, the other transactions are going to fail, throwing us an unable to lock row exception, because the maximum that they are going to wait and retry is 10 seconds. And that's something we cannot change. So we'll have a look into different scenarios where record locks are going to be a big problem, and that is the topic of skews. when I approached this topic, I was like, skew, that's an interesting word. I've never heard it before. I don't even know what the word means. So I started Googling the word, found a German translation, realized that's not going to help you if I tell you what the German word is for it. So I tried to find a definition for it, just because I find it easier sometimes to understand what we're talking about if we know what the word means. Skew, I'm sure you can all read, but I'll read it out loud real quick. Neither parallel nor at or right angles to a specified or implied line. The first sentence, I was like, yeah, that doesn't really tell me anything. The one that I find quite interesting is here. It basically tells us when we say something is skewed, then it is askew or crooked. Something is off. That's what I take from this. Skew means something is off. And in a database, a skew refers to a situation where we have an uneven distribution of data between relationships that they have. So I try to think of like a picture that you can keep in mind to understand what a skew actually is. And I came up with an image or the idea of people trying to go through a door. So just imagine we have two doors, we have a lot of people want to go through it. If all of the people, for some reason, they all try to go through this one door, this door is going to be pushed through with a lot of people. So we will run into issues here. You can already see it with all of those bubbles. And for some reason, this is being left off. So in this scenario, we have an uneven distribution of data, and we can already see with this example, it's going to cause issues. And as I was building this up, I don't know if you've ever had the chance to go on a Black Friday in the US, but that's basically what it looks like. It really reminded me of this. So maybe that's something you can keep on the back of your mind. That's where a skew can happen. When we have an even distribution of data, same scenario, but people are actually using two doors, we have an even distribution between the doors and the people. So people are going through both doors, and it all goes a lot smoother. So a skew refers into a situation where something is distributed unevenly. And in Salesforce, there's different scenarios in which those skews can happen, and we'll have a look at each of them. So they always happen when we talk about a parent and child relationship. And the uneven distribution that we are talking about means that the child records are unevenly distributed across all of the parent records available. And a typical parent-child relationship would be accounts and contacts, or accounts and opportunities, or accounts and cases. But because we can also build a lot of custom things in Salesforce, it can also, of course, happen through our own relationships that we've built. And when we run into a skew, then this will typically result in performance issues. We'll look into them in just a second. So especially when you learn for the sharing and visibility designer certification, this is going to be a topic that's going to come up because it's one of the biggest issues, especially when handling large data, and large data is something you'll need to know for the certification. You need to make sure you understand what the different kinds of skews are, how they can happen, and what you can do when they happened, and we'll look into that. So the three skews that we'll look into is account skews, ownership skews, and lookup skews. So let's start off with the first one. Account skews. No, actually lookup skews. Never mind, I should have reordered that. Lookup skews. A lookup skew, those lookup skews, they happen in object relationships when a large number of child records are associated to one parent account. So we have a parent, we have a child object, they relate to one another, and we have a lot of child records being associated to one parent account. We'll see a example in just a second. The problem that happens is that when a child record is inserted or updated, touched in any sort of way, Salesforce not only locks the child record, but it also locks the parent in order to maintain the data integrity. So when we work with a lot of data, when we work with large data sets, and there are processes that run in parallel, we can easily run into problems with our record locks, which is something that is called a lock contention. So before we look at an example, something that I do want to point out that although, and this one confused me for a while, and I Googled it because the word lookup skew, it feels like it only relates to lookup relationships, but it doesn't. It can happen on lookup relationships, but it can also happen on master detail relationships. And actually, it will more likely happen on a master detail relationship just because of the nature of that relationship and that the two records are so tightly bound to one another. Whereas in a lookup relationship, there is one configuration that you can do on that relationship that wouldn't have you run into a lookup skew. And I've noted this down here. It's one of the settings on how tightly are the records bound to each other. There's 3 check boxes in which you can choose what should happen when a parent record is deleted. And one of the configurations would be to clear the value of that lookup field on the child. If you've selected that, lookup skews shouldn't be an issue. But if you've either set to stop deletion of a parent record if it's bound to a child, then you will have this problem eventually if you have large data or if you have the cascade delete enabled, then this could also be a problem. The second one, there's a nice typo right there. Lookup skews can affect standard and custom objects. Since we can place lookup relationships and master detail relationships on both of them, or at least we can look up to standard objects through master detail relationships, or on a standard object, we can have lookup relationships going up to another one. It happens on both of them. So I thought of an example and I came up with the idea of having just a relationship between 2 objects in Salesforce. Let's say it's custom objects. One of them stores the rank of a player in Salesforce and the other one stores the player itself. I had a little bit the Salesforce trailhead in mind, where we have different ranks as we go up through the different badges. We go up in ranks. We start out as a scout and explorer, and then we become a mountaineer. So in this relationship, each player will be assigned a rank of the parent object. What would be the result of that? Even if we distribute all of the players evenly between the 3 ranks available, we would run into a result where each rank will have approximately 333,333 child player records attached to them. And this will potentially cause lock issues when we do loading or updating of the player information on a mass update basis, because as soon as we touch a player, its parent, the rank, will be locked for that period of time. And if there's another process that also updates players, we will run into a problem where the rank has been locked by another process. So that's the example for this one. Now, how can you identify a lookup skew? The thing is, and that's what makes it so challenging, is that first of all, it's not always going to be an issue, but it can become an issue. But there is no exact identifier by which you can find it. What I would recommend is don't wait until you get a complaint. Try to address or identify the problem right away. Just figure out where are areas in your system where you could potentially run into a lookup skew. So what you would want to take a look at is objects that have a lot of records and check out what they relate to. So what are parent objects of that object? Have a look at objects where you do a lot of inserts and updates, maybe even in parallel, maybe ones where you have data loads on a regular basis, where you have integrations, where you have a lot of automation happening, and also look at how do they relate to other objects in Salesforce, and is there a scenario where we can have a skew? And then, of course, if you've already gotten complaints about locks from users, it's usually that they say, yeah, I'm always trying to update these records, but I can never do it. That's usually what I've heard in the past. I can't do it. And I'm like, why can't you do it? And then we look at it together, and I realize sometimes they just get a locking error, and they don't know what to do with it. They just decide, oh, I guess I can't do it. But then there is an issue right there. What can you do when you have a lookup skew? So first of all, and you'll hear me say this a few more times, whenever possible, try to avoid them. However, it's not always possible. Sometimes we need to have a relationship where we can potentially run into a lookup skew, and then there are a few strategies to soothe them, to not have as many errors coming up through those locks. The first one would be to reduce record save time. So that would be look at Apex best practices. Make sure if you have Apex running, you follow the best practices. Have one trigger per object. Maybe you want to look into consolidating automation. If you have, and I'm sure a lot of you still do, because it's normal in a lot of orgs, if you have workflows and processes and flows and triggers, look at consolidating them, because then you can handle them a lot easier. Anything that can be processed asynchronously, make sure that it is being processed asynchronously if you've run into lookup skew problems. And also in preparation for it. So anything you can do asynchronously, and it doesn't need to happen right away, then do it. It will make the save time a lot lighter. Look into pick list fields. I know this one sounds weird, but in the example that we just looked at, where we just want to store what is the rank of the player, we had 3 values available. This might be a case where we can just work with a pick list field. We don't need an object relationship to another object. This might not always work, but sometimes it can. I've seen it in orgs where people just try to do it through an object, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I guess we could just do it through pick list. So do look at that. If you have an object that just has 3 records and other things relate to it, you might wanna reconsider doing that. Distribute the skew, so you could think about adding more records on the parent just to spread it out, and have some sort of round robin system to assign records to the right parent accounts. Think about having working intentionally with blank values, so saying that if it's left blank, that actually also has a meaning, just to make sure you don't have like a default fallback lookup record that then gets skewed, and do review the need for the lookup all in all, and see if you can maybe move to a pick list field. And then think about reducing the load. So look into serial loading. I know it takes a lot of time to do serial loads, but if you can do it, because it's something that's running through the night, look into doing it. If you've run into lock problems, then that will definitely be able to reduce those problems. When you do data loads, look into ordering the data by parent ID, and then chunk the data carefully, so you can actually make sure that the same parent record doesn't get locked in multiple threads when you do a parallel load. So those are some of the recommended strategies from Salesforce himself that you can look into when you have lookup skews that you simply cannot get rid of, but you need to manage it. So first one done, 2 more to go. The second one, account skew. And it is similar to a lookup skew, but it just relates to accounts. So as we probably all know, account is a very special object in Salesforce. It's a standard object, and it has a very special relationship to 3 objects: contacts, opportunities, and cases. So an account skew arises when we have a large number of child records, and here we actually have a number, more than 10,000 child records that are related to a single account. So for example, we have 10,000 or more than 10,000 contacts related to a single account. The two problems that can be happening through this is record locking problems, just the same way as we saw before with lookup relationships. With the lookup skew, we have those problems with the account as well, but we will also run into sharing problems because of implicit sharing. So we've learned a bit about implicit sharing earlier from Johan. So we have the parent implicit sharing built into the account contact, opportunity, and case relationship. So if you've got access to one of the child records, contacts, cases, and opportunities, you will always get read access to the related account. Now the problem if the sharing of a child record is updated, Salesforce will have to redo the sharing calculation to check if you still have access to the account. It's a lot easier to understand this with an example, and we'll see that in just a second. So depending on the amount of children that we have, the recalculation for the implicit sharing can take quite long and will cause performance issues. And during the whole operation of recalculating the sharing, a lock is placed on the account, preventing it from being edited. Before I talk about the example, I know a few people have to go. I'll be done in about 5 minutes. If you have to jump off, don't worry about it. We'll post this recording online so you can see the rest. Yeah, I'll keep on going here. So let's just imagine, and this is a standard example, we have a dummy account because it's a fallback account. All of the contacts that we don't know which account they belong to, they get assigned a dummy account. That will definitely cause issues. So here we've got the dummy account, we've got a lot of contacts that are assigned to it. I just put a number here. And the first one, Laura Smith, is owned by Nora, and the last one is owned by Nora. So I get read access to the dummy account. If this gets updated, and the owner of the first account, Lara Smith, gets updated to Camilla, then Salesforce will have to check all of the remaining contacts, and it will figure out there is one contact which Nora still has access to, so she's not going to lose her read access to the account. So this is what Salesforce has to do in the background that will cause performance issues because it will have to recalculate sharing, and if there's a lot of contacts, in that case it is contacts assigned to the account, that will cause performance issues. How to handle account skews? Well, again, whenever possible, try to avoid them. In order to do so, try to follow a few suggestions. So first of all, you want to make sure that you limit the amount of account children per object to 10,000. So when I say per object, that's contacts 10,000, opportunities 10,000, cases 10,000. If you need generic accounts, then do create a pool of them and use a round robin algorithm to distribute between them. So you can reduce the load through that. And this is one that I said before. Consider setting the account OWD, so the sharing, to public read write or public read only, because then the record logging issues will stay, but sharing calculations won't be as heavy, or if it's on public read write, they won't happen at all. This is a tricky one because it's not always possible, but if there is no reason to have the account on private and you have these problems, this can reduce the issue. And it is actually a recommendation from Salesforce in their documentation. So I know it's an interesting topic and there's probably some discussion that can happen on that. And think about redistributing existing child objects during off hours, having a batch Apex or doing it through the bulk API, so you distribute them through the other generic accounts that you've created. Last one, ownership skew. An ownership skew happens if a single user owns more than 10,000 records of one object. So here what we run into is performance issues that will happen where we have a lot of changes that require sharing recalculation. So these changes could be changing ownership-based sharing rules on a regular basis, changing record ownerships on a regular basis. This also relates to territories being changed on a regular basis, group members being updated on a regular basis, role hierarchy being updated on a regular basis. All of these changes, they will require Salesforce to recalculate sharing, and it will cause performance issues. So this is probably a topic that we can pick as another topic in the future on what happens in the background as we look into sharing recalculation. So I'll do this rather quickly. Let's just imagine we have a role hierarchy. We've got sales, we've got finance, and we have Sam Sales here. He's a sales rep. He owns a contact. So in the contacts table, we'll have Sam Sales as the owner of that contact. There is going to be a contact sharing table that will store that Sam Sales gets a share for that object because he's the owner. And then in the background, there is something that's called a group maintenance table that will contain who all in all will get access for something because of implicit sharing. So here, Sam Sales will get access through his, because he's the owner. Sally Sales and Camilla Chief, they both get access to this record through implicit sharing because they are higher up on the role hierarchy. And this is where recalculation would happen. So if we updated Sam Sales' role, he's just become the VP of Finance. It feels like a simple change as an admin to update a role of somebody. But what will happen in the back is this group maintenance table has to be redone. And in this case, not a lot of changes happen. It's just that Sally Sales won't get access anymore because she is now on the same level and Sam Sales has a new role. But imagine what would happen if we have 1,000, 10,000 users where we need to maintain sharing access. This would be something that has to be recalculated. And then if those people own a lot, we'll run into performance issues. So the two most common reasons for having these issues is having people as a fallback. A lot of times it's the system administration. He's the fallback owner for automations or data migrations, or usage of some sort of dummy user for unassigned records, for records through integrations. Those users can often own a lot of records. So what can you do if you run into it? Well, again, like you've heard it before, whenever possible, try to avoid it. I know it's not always possible. So if you have an ownership skew, there is a few suggestions that you can look into. First of all, try to make sure that the owner who is skewed, so the person who owns more than those 10,000 records, they are not part of the role hierarchy at all, or put them in a role at the top of the hierarchy or within its own branch so that there is no implicit sharing happening. Don't move that user into another role or don't move the role within the role hierarchy. Just leave it where it is because every time you move it, recalculations will happen. Keep the user out of public groups that are used for sharing. So you know that you can use public groups within sharing rules. You could use them in manual sharing. Those users who own more than 10,000 records shouldn't be in those. That will cause issues. And for organization-wide sharing, again, review OWDs is private necessary because this will affect the amount of calculation done around sharing. If it's put on public, it's a lot lighter than it is on private. I know, again, this is a topic that will probably raise a lot of discussion points. Maybe that's a good idea for actually a study group where we can discuss. Yeah, So last one, before we end this, you could also consider granting access for records on a profile level, or using criteria-based sharing rules, and not focus so much on the roles that those people are in. That would be another solution. So summary, whenever possible, try to avoid skews. If it's not possible, don't worry about them. Make sure you identify them, make sure you identify where you can run into the risk, and then apply the strategies that you've learned to soothe them or to handle them. And yeah, that's basically it. I think we'll have maybe time for 1 or 2 questions. Maybe Johan has identified 1 or 2 that are super critical. And then I just have 1 more overall summary slide, and we're done for today. So, Johan, do you know, was there anything that I should have a look at right now?
Thank you very much. No, there is no question coming up. Thanks for the great presentation. I think since we ran over the time, people are
Eager
quickly
to
leaving.
get going.
Yeah.
Oh no, I can't say it's Friday afternoon because people are all over the place, but it's Friday for everybody.
Yeah.
So
thanks a lot for the great presentation, Nora. Super insightful.
Thank you. So yeah, before we end this, just a quick summary. We have a recording of what we've done today, and we will share this after the meeting. Maybe not right away today, because we also want to go into the weekend, but beginning of next week, we'll upload the slides probably on LinkedIn. The recording will be on YouTube. This is also where we will be posting our answers to the questions that might have hidden within the chat. So we'll use the comments of YouTube to go into those answers. And then we'll keep you posted on the topics and the dates for the next session. Again, if you're interested in being a presenter, you have an idea for a topic already, maybe you already have a presentation for it, that's great. Just send us an email, reach out. And with that, thank you so much for coming. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the weekend.